Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our intro syntax series. Today, we are going to be continuing our discussion of constituency and ambiguity, looking at our discussion of lexical and syntactic ambiguity, and in particular, looking at that challenge sentence that I left off the last video with. Now, the sentence here, the British left waffles on Falkland Islands. Now, obviously, when I say the sentence out loud, it's going to lead us to a particular interpretation. But this sentence has two possible interpretations, and that was sort of one of the things that I said, hey, what are the possible interpretations here? Now, the further we are removed from the sort of historical events, I think the more we are pressed to the non-intended interpretation. So the non-intended interpretation is, again, based both in structural and lexical ambiguity. So the lexical ambiguity comes from a couple different places in this sentence. So this is, again, based on a headline. And there are basically three forms of lexical ambiguity in this sentence. We can have an interpretation of the British, as either an adjective modifying the noun left, meaning like the left wing of the British political establishment, or we can have British as a noun, meaning like a group of British people or the British people as a collective. So let's go ahead and mark that ambiguity. So we can either have this as an adjective or it can be a noun. Now, when this is an adjective, the interpretation of left must be that left is a noun. So this is the British left, the group of like left leaning, the sort of part of the political spectrum of the British government, political collective, and so forth. And that will also feed into the interpretation of waffles. Waffles is a verb that maybe everyone has not been familiar with, but it does have a possible verbal interpretation. So again, this is lexical ambiguity. So it means to sort of change positions back and forth, to sort of shift between two variable positions. So the intended interpretation here is this interpretation where we have the British left, so this collective, the political left of the British political party is waffling. They're changing their positions on the issue of the Falkland Islands. If you're not aware of the sort of historical events, in the 1980s there was a territorial dispute over a island chain off of the coast of Argentina between the UK and Argentina, which resulted in ultimately in a war between Argentina and the UK. And so this headline is from events preceding that, where the British left was waffling over how Britain should react to some of the issues in Argentina. So the rest of it is not going to change, and we're going to just go ahead and treat Falkland Islands as a single noun. It's probably the correct analysis and also just makes our job a little easier. So the intended interpretation, and I'll just go ahead and fill in the rest of we have a determiner, an adjective, a noun, a verb, a preposition, and then a noun. So again, this is a form of lexical ambiguity because we have these different meanings. But these different meanings are also feeding into different categorizations, which ultimately are also going to feed into different structure. So this is when I was talking about the video last time, that lexical ambiguity can feed structural ambiguity. So we can look again at the British left waffles on the Falkland Islands and look at the unintended meaning. Now, the unintended meaning is kind of humorous. It means that a group of British people, or the British as a collective, left, maybe forgot, left behind some breakfast pastries, some waffles on the Falkland Islands. Again, this is not a intended interpretation, but it I think is, especially now that these events are so far removed historically, is probably one that is more accessible. So no, that's right. So it comes down in part to the different categorization. And then, of course, these will feed into two different trees, which we can draw up here. So we have the British left waffles on the Falkland Islands. The structure of that tree will look something along these lines, where we get the original intended interpretation. So we're going to have the determiner the in that D position, an adjective phrase containing British, and then our noun left. And then our verb phrase is going to contain our verb waffles, and our prepositional phrase on the Falkland Islands. So that's the tree under the intended interpretation. Now the tree under the sort of humorous, non-intended interpretation, again, is going to be structurally quite distinct. It's a very large TP there. Okay, so we're going to get our NP is only going to contain our determiner the, and then our noun British. Then we will have a VP containing our verb leave, or left, excuse me. An NP containing waffles. Oops, almost forgot the noun there, the label there. Sorry, that's getting a little messy. And then our prepositional phrase. Again, which will be identical on Falkland Islands. But you can see the key differences here. And again, this is structurally ambiguous as well, because again, the defining feature of being structurally ambiguous is that your structures are distinct, and these structures are very clearly distinct. So it's not the case that you're either lexically ambiguous or structurally ambiguous. You can be both lexically and structurally ambiguous, and lexical ambiguity can feed structural ambiguity. But again, all of this follows from our phrase structure rules. So this is a pretty short little video, sort of capturing this challenge sentence, sort of reinforcing the notions the of the ways in which we can encode ambiguity, and the ways in which that's captured through our constituency. Coming up next, just to sort of talk a little bit about where we're headed, we're going to have a couple videos looking at structural relations. So looking at the ways in which the tree interacts with itself, basically. So these videos, now I personally think this stuff is super fun. It's going to get a little more mathematical, probably in a sense a little bit more dry. We're going to talk a lot about relations and the relations between nodes and things like that. That said, these become really important because they're going to help us define a bunch of other sort of relationships that exist within language over the following videos. So do try to stick with those, even if they do seem a little dry. I'll try to keep them enlivened. All right, so again, this one was short, but I hope you got something out of it. I, as always, want to leave with a quote. I'm going to go back to Marcus Aurelius, and from his meditations. Often injustice lies in what you aren't doing, not only in what you are doing. Again, I hope you all are healthy and safe, and I will see you again very soon.